Everyone, welcome. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Rad, chapter 13, verses 10 to 13. We covered verses 1 to 9 at our previous presentation. These are the references, and this is our contact. Verse 13:10, one aspect of the law of requital. Swam minkum man asarra al-qawla wa man jahara bihi wa man huwa mustakhfin bil-layli wa saribun bin-nahar. The sight of his law is so refined that if anyone among you hides something or manifests it, or some person walks around openly in daylight or in the darkness of night, moves around doing something or other, all are the same to him. This is really an extension of the law of requital and its explanation, that is the physical side of it, that Allah is aware of all our thoughts and deeds. In this guidance for us to come to grips with this fact that whatever goes on in the human world, whether physical or non-physical, all is within the reach of the law of Allah or Allah Himself. Because Allah relates a lot of things to Himself in the Quran, so we can figure it out that what is its significance in terms of relating it to Allah or not relating it to Allah. But because human beings are responsible in this life for their own thoughts and deeds, hence we should look at it from that point of view as well. This aspect is not constrained by visibility, i.e. whether it is daytime or nighttime. This aspect should become part of our psyche through our deliberate efforts by repeated thinking and practice. So what I have said over here is that it is important for us to keep this in mind, that we should be aware of law of requital all the time functioning in life. So important point is that law of requital and its functioning should become a part of our psyche. Once this becomes part of our consciousness, then it provides guidance in dealing with our thoughts and our conduct. This also provides strength when we see wrong being done under the man-made system. Our self keeps reminding us about the wrong and right paths of life, and by being on the right path, we have the assurance that everything is being taken care of within the domain of the law of requital. Allah is present everywhere. He is making sure nothing escapes His law. So point over here which Quran is making, that make it part of your consciousness all the time and think about it on a daily basis. Because we forget, human beings forget very quickly. I also forget things very quickly. So all our actions are in the present. We have to bring past in front of us and we have to think about the future. So all the time we should be conscious of the law of requital. Next verse is Lahu mu'aqibatum min bayni yadayhi wa min khalfihi yahfazunahu min amrillah. Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Wa iza arada Allahu biqawmin su'an fala maradda lahu wa ma lahum min dunihi min wal. The parts which are extremely important in this verse are Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, and as a consequence of that then is wa iza arada Allahu. So this point we will go through it in slightly more detail today. For the functioning of His law of requital, there are such forces appointed in front and behind every person, which, by chasing every deed of his, make it reach its outcome. And every deed of man becomes preserved and must always produce its results. Next is, and since a nation is only a collection of individuals, hence going forward, this very law is also applicable to nations. The consequence of this law is that Allah does not alter the condition of any nation until that nation changes its own state, i.e. until it brings a change within its own heart and mind. What is noted over here is that a nation changes its own state, and when we talk of the state, it includes their cognitive thinking, that is cognitive abilities as well. So that is very important, because whatever we do, we think first and then we do it. Hence the way in which this is an established principle, that whatever bounties of life are available to some nation, they are not snatched from it, while it has the ability to retain these within itself in the same way. This is also an immutable law, that when destruction comes to a nation as a consequence of its deeds, then no one can halt it. nor can there be any helper and supporter to this nation. But if it turns to the law of Allah, then it can be helped. So important point is that the state of a nation is directly proportional to the way it thinks and then acts on it. Another perspective given to this permanent value. I have called it permanent value, this part of the verse, that it is in fact a part of the functioning of law of requital. ذَلِكَ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ كَدَابِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَأَخَذَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَوِيٌّ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَكُن مُغَيِّرًا نِعْمَةً أَنْعَمَهَا عَلَى قَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Now, these are three verses taken from Surah Anfal, where exactly the same law or the value has been quoted, but slightly different, because over here the nemat comes into it. This is due to the deeds which your hands have sent forward. Allah never does zulm to people. So I quoted this verse because I thought this is the way the whole perspective has been given to this verse 853. So it is important for us, and we have gone over it previously as well, that Allah does not do injustice to anyone in the world. Human beings do it to themselves. Like the people of Pharaoh, and over here the Quran quotes the example of Pharaoh and those before them, they rejected the signs of Allah. We know that in our previous presentation, we talked about the signs of Allah, both within us as well as in the outer physical world. And Allah punished them for their crimes, for Allah is strict in retribution. So Quran is asking us to think through these things in detail, that if something good has come to us, why did we earn it? And if something bad has come to us, why did we get it? This is because Allah will never change nema, which are the bounties of Allah, blessings of Allah. Everything is a nema, which the good which comes to us, bestowed on a people until they change their own psyche themselves. Verily, Allah is Sami and Ali. Now, next one is comprehending the mode of functioning of this value leads to becoming abrar. And verse 177 should also be checked with it. Now, over here, I've quoted 4 verses. But inna alaykum la hafizina kiraman katibina yalamuna ma tafaluna inna labrara lafi naim. This is regarding the one aspect of the working of the law of requital, and the Quran has given another example that you should take it this way, that as if somebody is looking on what you are doing in this world. But verily over you are those who keep an eye on you. So this is another way of explaining to us that we are accountable for whatever we do. Honorable writing down what you do. So Kiraman Katibin, that those who are writing down what you are doing are extremely honorable, because we know that law of requital works through our own psyche. They know all that you do. Yalamuna ma tafalu. So important thing is that we should be fully aware of what we do, the way we are acting in our day-to-day life, individually as well as collectively. This aspect will be further clarified later. As for the abrar, they will be in a state of nemat. And we know that there, from which this word abrar is the vastness of our consciousness. That is our ability to understand the word and ability to understand the solutions of the word and the system of being. Quran has put a lot of emphasis on this, and also said that through amal saleh, through saleh deeds, we can acquire this ability of bir, and we can become abrar. And that is why it says then lafi naim, they will be in a state of nemat, because they will be the ones who will expand the horizon of their consciousness, and as a result they will understand where they are in the world and what is going on around them, and they will be able to utilize their own abilities and potentials to the maximum in the light of the Quran. Now, over here, what I've done is, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, and some reflections which I thought would like to share with you. And these are based on my own study as well as listening to the lectures of Allama Pervez, and of course our own experiences as well. Since here, as in other places in the Quran, Allah has related this directly to himself, that he makes sure that the condition of a people cannot change unless they change their own psyche. It may be construed by some as if Allah does this directly. This requires further elaboration through examples from our life. Next I've said is, when the Quran states a permanent value, it leaves to us to figure out further details by looking around the world in which we live. If the world around us is devised by man and it is not a system of being, as we know, today's world is fully, completely devised by man. It's not a system of being. It's not based on the permanent values. We need to look at evidence from the condition of various nations and analyze the sum total of the state of their existence with two perspectives in mind. So if we look at the world around us, and we can look at each and every nation, in fact, we can divide them into three categories: the most powerful, the most prosperous, then middle of the range, and the poorest. And then we compare them within their own domain, as well as by comparing with each other. Firstly, how do these measure up against the criteria, indicators, markers, and standards set by the man-devised system? So over here, what I've done is I said that before we look at them using the Quranic criteria and standards and value system, we should try to look at them from those values and those standards which man himself has devised. For example, we can go to UNO and find out from their charter what exactly they have decided by coming together. For example, economic, social, political, educational, military power, geographical location, public outlook, etc. Secondly, we compare it with the criteria put forward by the Quranic system of being. Because in this verse, what Quran is saying is that Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin, that everything in a nation has to be taken into account when you are trying to study their rise and their fall and their problems. Because if we miss some aspect, then we are not really looking at it holistically. This will provide us with an objective comparison between the two states, i.e., what is the reality on the ground and what ought the reality to be. Because in life, we have to see that where we are and where we are heading for. And when we say heading for our future, we look at the nearer future, we look at the middle period or middle state, and then the far off state as well. Because life is a continuous journey. By referring to the human nafs, the Quran has factually brought in the hereafter as well, i.e., the world created by those who have Iman will be completely different from those who do not have Iman. So when we are doing this kind of a study and this kind of a research and this kind of a projection, we should also keep it in mind that since we have Iman, then what we are looking at is by keeping hereafter in our mind as well. So both have to be compared, that the world which is right in front of us, where hereafter doesn't come into their equation, how this is developing. And if hereafter comes into it, how it is going to be. Next is this part of the verse has two important parts. The first part is Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin, refers to the fact that Allah does not change the condition of any people, i.e. the people who wish to bring a change need to initiate actions for this. Only then will the first part be applicable. This means that the first part only becomes applicable when the second part becomes the first cause. The second part states, Hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, that until and unless they change their own nafs. And over here, we should keep it in mind, this is a collective nafs of a nation. And this is something beautiful because we all know that nafs is very much an individual thing. So that means if the nafs of everyone comes together in a team, then it becomes a united nafs, and we should look at the way outlook has developed in that particular team, community, society, nation. Meaning until these people bring about a change within their own selves, i.e. the success of the first part is conditional on the second part, i.e. the initiative is in the hands of people themselves. Next is another point to notice that the law relates to the whole of a nation, and then the term nafs is referred to collectively, as I've said, I've commented under the previous point. If we take this aspect into account, we can understand the psyche of each and every nation in the world by looking at the psyche of the majority, as the majority defines the outlook and conduct of a nation. The point over here is that this point will come up again towards the end. That psyche of the majority, when I said that, or we say that, of course, that majority is following their leaders. And leaders have the mechanism nowadays to manufacture this consent. That is why they want the majority to follow them. And for that, what they do is they attract them in a way through propaganda that majority does follow them. This law of Allah points to the importance of bringing a change within ourselves, i.e. change in our desire, motivation, thinking, outlook, vision, education, training, state of development of ourselves. This also eliminates the need for supplications. What are supplications? We have covered it before. These are our desires, but these desires should be rational. These should be realistic desires. We can't desire something which we are unable to fulfill, as it places the complete onus on us as the initiators of first cause. If we want to change our circumstances as a nation, then we need to have the desire for this and then act on it. So without desire, we cannot accomplish anything. So there should be some mechanism by which we have to have that desire first. And of course, for that, we need knowledge. This is evidence-based phenomena, and there is no ambiguity in it of any kind. Next is the next part of the verse is, إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ سُوءًا فَلَا مَرَدَّ لَهُ وَمَا لَهُم مِّن دُونِهِ مِن وَالٍ. This points to the fact that if these people make the decision to follow a certain path, then Allah will also change His intent accordingly to ensure that people reap what they sow. So this is the beautiful part of this verse, that first Quran says that Allah does not change the state of a nation until they change their psyche. And once they have changed their psyche, then it becomes Arad Allah. It also becomes intent of Allah as well. So initiative is in our hand. If we want Allah's law to benefit us, then we have to act first. If they end up sowing evil, then Allah's law of requital will make sure they reap its consequences, and they will get it in direct proportion to what they do. Very important for us as students of the Quran that everything works in direct proportion. And there is very precise correlation between the two, cause and effect. So we have to figure it out. We should not let it go as if this is something random, as if this is what has happened is just by chance. No injustice will be done to anyone. So what is going on around us in this world, in the light of this verse, we have to see that what precisely is going to come out of it. Two distinct paths of life define two different belief systems. Now over here, what I've done is I've drawn a small schematic just to increase our interest and make it slightly more colorful. Same planet occupied by billions, each carrying their own burden and leaving a mark on the world of today. So each one of us, the way we are living our life, whether conforming to everyone else or different with others or having our own values or the values of the majority, we are leaving a mark on this world as part of all human beings with whom we are residing on this planet. So we should keep that in mind. The whole planet is going around the sun and we all are on it, and all our deeds, all our thoughts and deeds are leaving an imprint on the life of this planet. Outer world depends on the self of each one of them. Now over here, what I've done is I've drawn a big arrow in which is depicting the life of everyone who are on this planet at this point in time. And I'll call it highway of human life. The path of the majority who live their life acquiring the benefits of this life without even recognizing the existence of a self within them. The world around us is the sum total of choices and intents of every single human being. Scales are different. Rich and powerful have a higher scale in terms of their contribution to the chaos than those who are at the bottom of the hierarchy of the human pyramid. Khawf and huzn pervades every part of the globe. And we can verify it. We have gone through it. The Quran says that if you are following a non-deen path in the world, then there will always be khawf and huzn. And if we look at it, this is created by human hands. So this is created by human psyche, and through their deeds. Now, this is the path of Sirat al-Mustaqim. I have put it as a dash line so that it is differentiated. Number one. Number two, it is through our choice. Sirat al-Mustaqim, there is only one straight path, and those who are on this path firstly know that they are on this path. So it is important that if we are on this path, if I am on this path, I should have no doubt about it because I should check it against the values of the Quran. Secondly, they have acquired a higher status of their nafs, which recognizes the lower status of others. Now, we know that by following Iman and Amal Saleh, our self-awareness rises and we understand things much better than the people around us. And we also know what benefits are associated with following the path of Iman and Amal Saleh. So this is the point I have commented over here. Hence, they are unwilling to leave this status and lower themselves to the state of those who are not on this path. Very important point over here, which we have discussed previously as well. There is no harm in reminding ourselves that once we raise the level of our self-development to a higher level, then we have essentially left behind where we were. And we have acquired a new status and new understanding. And as a result, we can clearly differentiate between the two. Because unless we differentiate between the benefits of following our path, then the boundaries between the two will remain hazy. And with those hazy boundaries, we can be distracted and we can always, we are likely to suffer as well, because our efforts become diluted. Thirdly, they are in the company of all those who have brought themselves within the value system of the Quran, i.e. have removed their differences or cognitive dissonances. So this is another important point here, is that when we come together, this is not a path of falling alone. It's not like meditation, our individual salvation. It is about coming together, because coming together becomes our need. When we follow Iman and Amal Saleh, we look for others who are also following this path. So Sirat al-Mustaqim means that all of us have to be together on this path. And in today's world, the physical coming together is at the moment slightly more challenging, but still through this platform and through our own thinking, we know coming together is a prerequisite to the establishment of the system of Deen. Now, this is one-way street. Once we have left this path of majority, then it is one way. And this we should keep it in mind cognitively, not physically. Physically, of course, we are in the same world. And wherever we join it, we become part of this Sirat al-Mustaqim, which is defined by Allah. And Allah himself has said that I am on Sirat al-Mustaqim, so essentially we are following him. And what I've done is I've just drawn these 4 arrows to make an impression on our mind that it is a one-way thing. Once we are on this path, then we should not be distracted by these people over here. We should be very clear that our path is different from the people over here. And because these distractions are going to dilute our efforts. And over here, I've quoted a verse from Surah Kaf, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ وَلِقَائِهِ فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. A very good reminder. I always keep this verse in my mind that whatever I'm doing, I check it against the criteria of the Quran. I check my thoughts as well against the criteria of the Quran, because it is important to keep reminding, because that is the way self develops. And that reminding ability helps us to take ourselves higher and also prevent distractions. The translation of this is, they are those who do kufr of the signs of their Rabb. And we have covered this in our previous talk as well. And the fact of meeting him, and liqai Rabbi, and if you remember, that means that we have to keep it in mind, the system of Rububiyyat and also the law of requital in our mind. Vain will be their works and no weight will be given to their deeds on the day of Qiyamah. What Quran is saying is that since they wouldn't have done Iman, they would not have acquired Iman as defined by the Quran, and would not done Amal Saleh, they would have never be able to acquire that self which is of use in the hereafter. So the question over here is, or the important point for us is that we should not be distracted. Once we have come to Sirat al-Mustaqim, we should stay firmly on that and stay firmly with those who are already on this path and follow as Allah has guided us. Not remaining cognizant of this value leads to ruin and destruction. However, this does not occur in one day. Now, over here, I have quoted a couple of verses which I thought elaborate this particular value. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا قَرْيَةً كَانَتْ آمِنَةً مُطْمَئِنَّةً يَأْتِيهَا رِزْقُهَا رَغَدًا مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ فَأَذَاقَهَا اللَّهُ لِبَاسَ الْجُوعِ وَالْخَوْفِ بِمَا كَانُوا يَصْنَعُونَ. Allah sets forth a parable, a people enjoying security and peace, abundantly supplied with sustenance from all directions, yet it committed kufr of name of Allah. So Allah made it taste of hunger and fear like a garment, covering the whole body because of what they deliberately fabricated. Next verse is وَكَمْ قَسَمْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ كَانَتْ ظَالِمَةً وَأَنْشَأْنَا بَعْدَهَا قَوْمًا آخَرِينَ. How many were the populations we utterly destroyed because of their zulm, setting up in their places other peoples? So what Quran has noted over here is that when, as a community, as a society, as a nation, as a world, we run into problems, we should look at the psyche working behind the conditions which led us to that ruin. And similarly, we also should remind ourselves that if we are getting prosperity and benefit as a nation, as a world, then are we following Allah's laws, or is it just following the laws of nature? And some of us, there is such a big divide between rich and poor. The state of the world will tell us that what kind of a psyche is of those who are controlling the world, and of course, the majority who is following them. So this is the point I would like to make out of these two verses. Next one is nothing remains static within the human psyche. Wrong thinking leads to more dissonance, more problems in the world. First is summa kasat qulubukum min ba'di zalika fa hiya kal hijarati aw ashaddu qaswatan wa inna min al hijarati lama yatafajjaru minhu al anharu wa inna minha lama yashaqqaqu wa yakhruju minhu al ma'u wa inna minha lama yahbitu min khashyati Allah. Very important point which comes out of this verse. It was stated to Bani Israel that this kept happening to you, that you kept disintegrating and reforming. So it is again in relation to a nation, a set of people. Due to this continuous arrogance and egotism, your hearts became hard like rocks. Very important. Due to this continuous arrogance and egotism, your hearts became hard like rocks. So we should not take it that by disobeying, by not even being ignorant of the values of the Quran, nothing will happen to our psyche and we will still enjoy the benefits of this life fully. No way. Even more hardened than this. What Quran says is that our hearts become very hardened. We become arrogant. We become stubborn. And as a result, we make mistakes. We become egocentric. And that is important to note over here. This is because there are some rocks through which water does seep through as droplets, and some are such which split open for springs to flow. And streams start flowing because these become softened according to the laws of Allah. Beautiful metaphor quoted by the Quran that even stones are not as hard as your hearts become. And we see it all around us, where people become extremely cruel and tyrannical towards others. But your hearts are such that these neither become softened for the compassion of humanity, nor do these bow down before truth after giving up their haughtiness. And Allah's law of requital knows all that you do. I quoted this verse because we want to be, the way world is transforming and changing around us, we should remain very vigilant about it. Because of coming towards the Quran, we have become extremely compassionate, we have become kind, we have become extremely honest, and we have a very high level of fidelity and living up to our commitments. If you remember, we went through some of these potentials. So our potentials, the best is coming out of ourselves. Whereas these people who do not follow the Quran, we should be aware of this, that they are very hard, they will be arrogant, they will be more or less criminal, zalim, and all those terms which the Quran has used about certain conditions of these people, we should keep that in mind as well, so that we are not mistaken, so that we are not deceived. And this is important, that is why I quoted this verse. Next is very interesting, وَإِذَا بَطَشْتُمْ بَطَشْتُمْ جَبَّارِينَ. and you keep making all kinds of equipment and armaments not to stop injustice, rather, and we have seen the military industrial complex across the world, which is there to destroy others, not to help others, not to provide them food, not to eliminate ignorance and eliminate poverty. That is there to destroy them, to ensure that your iron grip is never loosened on the weak and your supremacy and authority, coercion and tyranny always remain established. Very important. What Quran is saying is that you want to keep continuing with your coercion, tyranny, authority, supremacy, and of exploiting others and enslaving others. And this is something which we have to keep it in mind, and we can observe it with our own eyes, evidence-based around in the world. Now, next verse is, if our psyche cannot see yatim and miskeen, then outer world will keep getting worse. And رَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. And we can look at the intervening verses, because I thought 107 is summing it up. Have you noticed the state of that individual who acknowledges Islam from his lips but rejects it in practical terms, i.e., evidence of this fact that if this is deen which he manifests through his deeds, then every proclamation of deen is false. And what he does is, the purpose of deen was this, that the person who becomes desolate need not feel that he's alone and helpless. And remember, in a system of deen, nobody will feel desolate, isolated, and helpless. This is a transitory period. The Quran is pointing our attention towards the system which is man-made. And if for any reason his needs are not met, then these are immediately met. But the condition of this person proclaiming deen is such that the person who becomes yatim, he pushes him away and neither helps miskeen himself nor encourages others to do so. In fact, such a system produces yatim and miskeen en masse. We can see that in the world, that every day there is increase in poverty in certain parts of the world. The consequence of this self-deception is such that on the one hand, they say their prayers, rituals, and on the other hand, put blocks on the source of risk which need to be freely available like a flowing stream, and seize these. And in this way, deprive other needy ones from the means of nourishment. Very important. We have to be extremely alive to what is happening around us and how to cope with it at this stage psychologically, and at the same time to look forward to when the system of deen at some point gets established or makes a start. Because if there is no hope, if we think that this world is not going to change in my lifetime, then we are likely to get distracted and slow down and even give it up. And remember, if we give it up, then essentially, as I've shown in that schematic, we will go back to the main stream. Then we would have left the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Recognizing the state of human psyche in the world is part of our self-development process. You may have noticed that the verses which I've quoted over here are illustrating this point, that the world around us has a certain psyche, and that psyche Quran has drawn our attention at numerous places, and these verses are related to some of those aspects. Kalla balla tukrimuna al-yatima wa la tahadduna ala ta'amil miskin wa tuhibbuna al-mala hubban jamma. Kalla adha dukkatil ardu dakkan dakka wa ja'a rabbuka wal malaku saffan saffa. The reason for chaos in the world is that you have established such a society in which human beings are not treated with respect and dignity. For example, and made yatim due to the unjust system created by you. Only he is considered worthy of respect with a strong party behind him. In this society, there is no support for those who become miskeen for some reason. The society, in fact, creates them. And you made such a system that the wealth of others becomes attracted towards yours. The system of yours cannot go uninhabited. So this is the point which Quran is saying, that this cannot continue infinitely. This has to come to an end, and this will come to an end when Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen will start acting on it. And Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen does not grow out of the ground. It has to come together. All those individuals who understand the Quran, accept Iman, and then do solid deeds and bring themselves to that level where they develop an urge to come together. An era will arrive when imbalances will be removed. The system of Rububiyyat with all universal forces come together and will become established in the world. In this system, the means of sustenance will be made available for the use of the whole of mankind. Our cognitive makeup influences our outer world. Afala yatadabbaruna al-Qur'ana am ala qulubin aqfaluha. It is amazing why these people do not reflect and reason in the Quran. Why are locks imposed on their hearts such that anything related to intellect and reasoning does not get through? And this is important because over here again, aqfaluha, that they have essentially applied locks from within their own hearts. They have locked their own room from inside and they are not interested to unlock it. Innamal hayatud dunya laibun wa lahwun wa in tuminu wa tattaku yutikum ujurakum wa la yas'alkum amwala. Your purpose and aim should not merely be acquisition of the benefits of this world, which are essential as well. We want to live our physical life. Your vision should remain focused on the lofty permanent values. Compared to these, worldly life and its allurements do not have more significance than this. So it is a matter of setting our priorities right. It is a matter of thinking through this, that every day comes and goes. And what all we need is not a lot. We need clothes, we need some shelter, we need a bed in that house and some food. But is that the purpose of life? Or the purpose of life is higher than that, wider than that? That these are mere play and amusement. This should be kept in mind as well, that how much time are we wasting on these things? We require limited entertainment as well. But life being precious, valuable, and we are not going to come back, we should utilize it to the best of our ability for whatever good we can do. If you maintain a firm conviction in this matter and take care of the permanent values, then the law of requital of Allah will provide you with complete recompense for your act. The point here is that we should have a firm iman, that as our self is becoming better and better as the days are passing, we are becoming abrar. That is providing us evidence that law of requital is working and none of our efforts will go wasted. Next verse is very interesting. Ha antum haulai tut'auna litunfiqu fi sabilillahi faminkum man yabkhalu wa man yabkhal fa innama yabkhalu an nafsihi wallahu al-ghaniyyu wa antum al-fuqara wa in tatawallaw yastabdil qauman ghayrakum summa la yakunu amthalakum. But there are such people among you who, when they are asked to keep their wealth available for this system of Allah, act in a miserly way. Because we have inbuilt affection for wealth, because it gives us some kind of a security, particularly under the capitalist system. We tend to do that. But over here, Quran is saying that once you have come together, you don't have any reason to hold back that and proportionally take out for strengthening the system. Because that will help you to develop your own self. That will stop you from getting distracted as well. They need to know that the person who acts in a miserly way does so against his own self. Allah is not in need of you. You are in need of this system for your own nourishment. Beautifully, Allah has drawn our attention to this fact that whatever is noted in the Quran is zikrukum. It is about you. And if you want the system to change and you're not happy with the man-made system, then here is the procedure. Here is the process which you follow under our supervision, under our direct vision. And we are looking at it, we are hearing as well, and we are not gone away. So if we go back to this verse 13:11, we see this is what Quran is drawing our attention. Because Quran is for mu'mineen and muttaqeen. It is not asking mushrikeen and kafireen to keep these laws in mind and permanent values in mind. This is essentially for each one of us, for example, on this platform. If you turn away from this system and do not fulfill your covenant, then he will bring another people in your place who will not be like you. Very important warning for us as well. Not to be fearful of it, but try to understand it as a law, as a permanent value that continuously in this world, we are actually on a conveyor belt. And as we are going forward in this conveyor belt of life, and as we are nearing our death, there are other people who are coming behind us. There are new people being born, and they're also getting onto this conveyor belt. But our conveyor belt is slightly different from the conveyor belt of everyone. We are on a Sirat al-Mustaqim because we have left this conveyor belt and gone to something different, which is elevated, which is vast, which is working under different value system. So this is the point we should keep it in mind. This is because the law for the life and death of nations is this, that the nation which establishes the correct system of life remains, and the one establishing the wrong system becomes destroyed. Now, there are two verses in relation to the conduct of a nation. I included these two verses because I thought these bring out something very important. وَنَادَى فِرْعَوْنُ فِي قَوْمِهِ قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ أَلَيْسَ لِي مُلْكُ مِصْرَ وَهَٰذِهِ الْأَنْهَارُ تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِي أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And Pharaoh proclaimed among his people, saying, O my people, does not the dominion of Egypt belong to me? And you witness these streams flowing underneath my palace. What? See you not then? That Pharaoh announced it, because every Pharaoh of the world will tell others, will treat them as subjects, as slaves, and say that, don't you see the physical power I have? I'm your Rabb, and I'm the one who's controlling everything. And public also sees that, because there is an evidence. But Quran says, no, don't you move your vision away from him and then see who holds the real power. And that power can become yours if you follow the laws and the values which we are telling you. And that is what is pointed in verse 13:11, that Allah will change your condition if you change within what is within your psyche. You move your vision away from Pharaoh towards Allah and then see how change takes place. فَاسْتَخَفَّ قَوْمَهُ فَأَطَاعُوهُ إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَوْمًا فَاسِقِينَ. Absolutely brilliantly, Quran has summed it up in this verse. Thus did he make fools of his people. So Quran is saying, don't make fool of yourself by being distracted by the media and by all the allurement and by all the entertainment and by all the deception which is going on right in front of you. They want to manufacture consent in their favor. Don't get involved in that. Stay out of it. Try to recognize it. And they obeyed him. That is the worst thing which human beings do. Despite possessing a self which is supposed to be free, they willingly become slaves. Truly were they nation rebellious against Allah, and they were fasiqeen. See how Quran has made it clear that they will get nothing as far as the next life is concerned, and over here as well. If a Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen stands up, then whole of this fisk will disappear, and people will realize that. Because we do not have a mechanism at this point to explain to them the Quran the way it presents the system of deen. And that is something important which we need to come to grips with. The human psyche in relation to the world around us. Life ends with the physical death of man. Once brain dead, we are dead. There is no life in the hereafter, as it is our physical brain which defines our existence in this life. This is total denial of the existence of the human self. This point merits further analysis. Most human beings do not take into account their own self and their own consciousness. They think that once our brain is dead, we are dead. And that is a concept of self-deception and suicide. If we deny the existence of some fact, then we can never make an effort to discover it, and hence it remains bilguide despite the fact that it exists as a reality. And it's important, a lot of false beliefs, because people hold on to them thinking those to be correct, despite the fact that do not get any benefits out of it. That is something which we should take into account, and when we point the attention of others towards the Quran, we should explain to them. Hence, if our self exists and we do not identify it first and do not then proceed to develop it, we essentially fail to gain the benefits of this life which are associated with a developed self through its potentials. Because if we do not see that self to which the Quran is pointing our attention, then essentially we are living with a self which is non-Quranic. And as we have seen that by acquiring a Quranic self and then developing its potentials, how much better our outlook and our life becomes. Even while living in a non-Quranic world, we can still feel that we are far higher in understanding and in self-awareness than rest of others. And freedom from فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And as a result, we at least understand that why khawf and huzn has been created in this world. And we know that it is human thoughts and human beings and through their hands which creates khawf and huzn. Because they breed on that. They live on that. They want to create khawf so that majority does not get against them. If the presence of the self is not recognized within us, then there is no possibility of discovering it, and hence no possibility of developing it further. It is that simple. The word of deen is to be created and established by those who have acquired a Quranic self, and the existing word is to be viewed through the Quranic lens. If we fail to see this despite claiming to be Quranic, then our psyche is not capable of changing the outer world, hence we become a contributor to this chaos unwittingly. It's an important point. I have gone through it before as well, but over here, this particular verse is drawing our intense focus and attention towards this fact that the world around us can be changed if first we bring that change within our psyche to which the Quran is pointing our attention. No matter how sincere we are in having Iman in the Quran and its value system. Those who control the world, their psyche leads the general public, and hence we need to look at their psyche and verify it using the Quranic criteria. Most of the public also reflect the thinking of their leaders. The system uses the media to manufacture consent of their own choice, i.e., this changes the nafs of the majority through their willing submission. The human psyche in relation to the world around us, the part 2, we have seen that there is no guidance placed within us like the guidance provided to animals as their instincts. Essentially, we make our choices using our free will, and if someone can create an environment to influence our choices, then essentially we hand over control of ourselves to this outer agency, willingly or unwittingly. So we have to look at our world and also be aware of our own self, that I hope that I am not being guided and directed by the majority around me. Because if I'm doing things, if I'm thinking the way majority is thinking and majority wants me to think, then essentially I'm not making any choice. Essentially, I'm not living as a human being, and that will be an unlived life. This is what is going on in our world. The majority think they make their own decisions, for example, to vote for a leader or a party, but essentially they are being guided towards this while thinking they are doing the right thing. In such a world, there is the need for wahi, which can inform us what the human world will be like without its guidance, and then tells us what will it be like when changed in the light of the guidance of the Quran. If we wish to see the world of, say, 30 years from now, just look at the education system of a nation and then see what kind of selves it is helping children to have. The picture will become very clear. Those nations in which the majority remain uneducated, not even getting secular education, what future do they have? We have gone through some aspects of the self's development. Just see if this becomes part of any education system, and then we can see a totally new world will emerge free from fear and husn. Human psyche in relation to the world around us, part 3. The trend of the present world is based on relative values of self-interest and private ownership, in which success is defined by the accumulation of as much wealth as possible, even if it leaves the majority visibly deprived and miserable. So if we are not aware of the wealth which is getting accumulated in few hands and what effects it has on others, then essentially we are missing the core message of the Quran, that is within mainstream. By looking at this state, we can easily find out the kind of psyche of the majority if we care to look at this part of the verse in reverse order. So we can look at this verse from backwards as well, that if the psyche of a people does not change, then Allah is not going to change their state. The Quran has made another point crystal clear from this, that without a change in the self, nothing will change in this life. And since the next life is based on the self, hence only that change in the self will be acceptable in the hereafter, which meets the criteria of the Quran. And for that, it says, "Bi-liqa'i rabbikum tuqinun." We looked at it in our previous talk as well. Acquire that self which can come to grips with rububiyyah, which encompasses both the outer world as well as our inner world. Because by coming to understand rububiyyah means we will understand the purpose of our own creation and the destination of our future, or where we are heading for. If I don't know where I'm heading for, then essentially I'm not really living a life as suggested, as guided by the Quran. This will make the reality and purpose of human creation itself manifest on this developed self. Children are the raw material of our world. Whatever mold we have for them in different nations, that is what they will become in that nation. If we want to change the world from now in the next 30 years, 40 years, then we have to first come to grips with this ourselves and then try to bring change in our children. At least at our family state, we can ask our children to acquire the values of the Quran, to follow Iman and Amal Saleh. And you will find that even in the later part of our own life, we will have different children than what others have. We need to understand the Quranic mold fully and then present it to the world rationally and based on evidence. Try selling it in its true form and then see how mankind will become attracted to this guidance, which will bring out the best, which is potentially within each one of us. And that is why Quran right at the beginning said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Asana is the superlative degree of husn or beauty. And over here, Quran has pointed our direction that Quran will bring out those potentials which you would have never ever even dreamed of remotely under a man-made system. Now let us go to the next verse, 13:12. هُوَ الَّذِي يُرِيكُمُ الْبَرْقَ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا وَيُنْشِئُ السَّحَابَ الثِّقَالَ. In this despairing condition from destructions, in order to assess the state of hope resulting from a return to the divine law, reflect again on the universe and see how in one event hope and despair come mixed together. You see the lightning sparks, and as a consequence fear and dread is created. But together with it, clouds laden with rain appear gathered together, which are full of messages of benefits for you. So Quran has said that even in the lightning and clouds coming together and possibility of rain and of course some wind as well, there is a message for you, because this should be treated as a sign, not that awesome, the rain has come and then we forget it and move on. Wahi provides hope and expectation about the rahmat of Allah. Next is in the physical world, rain comes after lightning with its associated benefits and gathering of clouds with its benefits. And as we know that even in lightning, there are plenty of benefits. For example, it is negatively charged, earth is positively charged, and then it creates that form of nitrogen, which is good as fertilizer. And of course, then it also adds to ozone. In a world where there is darkness everywhere, the light of Wahi points us to Sirat al-Mustaqim and invites us to stay firmly in it. Never be distracted by anyone who is not on the path of being. Now, next verse is the last one for today's presentation, is 13:13. وَيُسَبِّحُ الرَّعْدُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ مِنْ خِيفَتِهِ وَيُرْسِلُ الصَّوَاعِقَ يُصِيبُ بِهَا مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَهُمْ يُجَادِلُونَ فِي اللَّهِ وَهُوَ شَدِيدُ الْمِحَالِ. And this is from where the word Ar-Rad has been given to this surah as well. The thunder of these clouds, indeed all the forces of the universe trembling in themselves due to fear of the law of Allah, remain busy in performing their own duties, so that His rububiyyat becomes clearly apparent to each individual, witnessing this in such a way that words of appreciation appear on their lips spontaneously. As far as the destructions by lightning are concerned, they fall on those who make their abode in its path and wish to become destroyed themselves. And all that takes place according to the law of Mashiach of Allah. These people, despite these living evidences, dispute with you concerning the divine law and do not understand that whatever the law of Allah is doing in the universe, how very strict it also is in holding to account in the human world. All physical, mental tortures are preceded by human choice, and in turn, tyranny becomes accepted by majority. Over here, I have put down some pictures, some from Google, and put down some comments. And we will see that each event which is taking place in this world, there is a human psyche behind it. The first one is Guantanamo Bay. We know what happened, and people were put over there without any trial for years and years and years. And they are human beings just like you and me. We should just swap our places with them and think of that. And it is important that we give some thought to them as frequently as possible, because that keeps us on Sirat al-Mustaqim. Ignorance and false beliefs, this is what happens. And in fact, in some parts of the world, woman is treated so badly that 50%, almost 50% population is kept under ignorance. And this is important, that how are they going to develop? And because those who subjugate them, they themselves also have a non-rational mind. Beheading in the name of Islam, we know about it. And here's a child mate who has been badly beaten. And this is quite common in those parts of the world where child labor is common, where education and ignorance, there is no education and ignorance is prevalent. And these are the scenes which I would like that we should keep it in mind all the time and keep reminding ourselves, never to let it go away. Because these are the yateens and miskeens of our world. And ignorance for centuries. And some of us have been part of it, that is reading the Quran without understanding its meanings. And see how much ignorance we are inbreeding into the minds of these children. They are human beings like all of us. They are children like our children. And the light of the Quran is not getting through their minds. Beating when no resistance is offered. We see it on our television screen every other day. Slavery from childhood to grave. These ladies were born exactly like a child, any other child in a developed world. And if the same child is born in a Quranic family, he or she will be totally different from those who are born in deprived part of the world. And we should give some thoughts to them on a regular basis. And Abu Ghraib saga by a superpower, we know about it. And this is not about that superpower only. This is happening in every prison across the world, and more so in third world prison. Because poor man cannot stand up for his rights. First, he doesn't have a right, then somebody is going to catch him up without any even crime committed by him, and then they shut him up and they beat him up. A Palestinian human child, the picture says it all. And then is a child supposed to be born free. And see the fear on the face of this child, and just swap him with our own child in that place, because all children are equal. And if we are quite happy with the world in which we live, then really Quran is not for us. So that is the point I'm trying to make over here. Human beings who live in Yemen, because they happen to be in that part of the world, like Afghanistan, like Iraq, like Syria, like even Vietnam, if we go back in history, and we see what was their fault, except that they were geographically located in that part of the world. And then is captured in Afghanistan, and it was their own nation, it was their own country, it was their own place. And these guys have gone there thousands of miles away because they could do it, and because others allowed them to do it, permitted them to do it. So all these are very important signs in our world. And if we cannot keep these in mind and do not remind ourselves, then essentially we are missing the main message of the Quran. We are really not ready for taking over the responsibility of Allah, which He has asked us to take over in this world. And finally, I've drawn a small schematic here to conclude it. Pharaonic cycle of man divides system across the globe. Leaders holding reins of power right at the top, they wish to keep public on their side. They start to control the will of majority. And what they do is, because they draw their strength, we have seen it that they draw their strength from majority of the public whom they rule, whom they subjugate. And for that, they use media working on behalf of leaders, manufacturing concept, truth disappears. And in this media, we can also include the religious hierarchy, the religious clergy as well, because they are also media. They have these religious centers where they give lectures and misguide people. Capitalist system exploiting hard work, money defines success. And because these leaders also control the capitalist system, so what they do is they have the money, and money is the bloodline of modern world. And they use that to choke people, to buy them, and to exploit others. Public divided into parties, and the beauty is that they don't let the public come together as well cognitively and physically. And they have created such a system that they cannot come together. And if we look at the religious world, there is of course the sectarian divides, and then of course they are divided into parties as well. So cognitive dissonance keeps increasing. These are very hard-hitting points which we need to keep it in mind, and then we will understand the need for coming to the Quran. It's not, we should not take it as a joke or lightly that, okay, we will read it and move away. Every week, once we come back to this Sunday meeting, we should be better than the last Sunday. Public looks to leaders for guidance, majority hands over their will to them. And what happens is now with going through all this, these human beings, majority whose minds are already suffering from cognitive dissonance, there's so much rubbish trapped in their minds that they are going to follow these leaders. So leaders try to get hold of the majority, and then the majority follows the leaders, so the circle is complete. We can figure out this psyche and its effects by working backwards in verse 13:11. This is the representation of the word. What kind of psyche can create this word? So we should look at it very incisively, very alert. Of course, this will create some stress, and stress is part of it. We should create some stress and worry, because without stress and worry, we cannot move in this direction. Quran wants our intense focus and says that think about the world around you and see if you're not doing anything about it, even you're not thinking about it, you are doing harm to this world, you are contributing to the wrong state in which you are living. In order to counter this psyche, we need to acquire iman and knowledge of the world in which we live and knowledge of wahi, that is, we have to become alim to get maghfirat. Because if we are not alim, then we are not really heading for Allah's maghfirat, which will lead to become aziz, because that is where protection will come. And if we have these two, we have gone through some of these attributes previously as well, then we will become aziz. Saleh deeds are part of this recipe, not to become part of this pharaonic cycle. We should never ever let our mind become part of this cycle. We have to be outside looking at it and critically looking at it, all the time aimed at it, that we will get Allah's help through the Quran as long as we stay on Sirat al-Mustaqim together. And with that, we come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing it with me.